The rain had come down hard that night, cold and mean, like it was trying to scrape the memory off the earth. Silas Mercer stood on the porch of his crooked cabin, lantern light flickering behind him, and watched the dark trees sway like drunks in prayer. That's when he saw her. At first, just movement, low to the ground, clumsy, uncertain. Then lightning cracked the sky wide open, and he saw the figure clear. A young woman, soaked to the bone, slumped near the trail, blood painting her side like a second skin. Barefoot. Silent. Alone. He didn't call out. Words had long abandoned his tongue when they weren't needed. Instead, he grabbed the oilskin cloak from the peg by the door and stepped into the storm. Mud sucked at his boots as he crossed the distance, thunder groaning above like some god too tired to be angry anymore. She didn't flinch when he knelt beside her. She was awake, barely. Her eyes met his, dark, defiant, and filled with something deeper than pain. A kind of fury that had burned down to its embers. He knew that look. Had worn it himself, once. He didn't ask who she was. The beadwork at her neck, the paint half smeared across her cheek, the way she held herself even now, it told him enough. Comanche. He lifted her carefully. She was light but not fragile. Her breath was shallow, uneven. As he carried her back through the rain, a crow called out once, sharp as a warning. He didn't stop. Inside, the cabin was dim and dry, the wood stove still warm from the stew he hadn't touched. He laid her down on the cot by the fire, peeled off his coat, and lit the rest of the lanterns. The air smelled of wet earth and pine sap. He rolled up his sleeves. Her wound wasn't deep, but it was angry, red and swollen, trailing down her ribs like claw marks. He cleaned it with rainwater warmed on the stove, his hands rough but steady. She winced only once. Didn't cry out. Just watched him with those stone-set eyes. "I don't got Comanche," he said softly, almost to himself. "But I'll try not to make a mess of things." She said nothing. Just blinked, slow and deliberate. He wrapped the wound, tucked a folded blanket beneath her head, and set a cup of water by the cot. She didn't drink. The silence stretched between them, thick as wool. He moved to the hearth and stoked the fire. Behind him, she curled tighter, the blanket rising and falling with each breath. Outside, the wind had quieted to a hush. He stayed up that night. Not out of fear. Not entirely. But because something in the way she'd looked at him, like he was a question she'd already answered, unsettled the dust in his bones. By morning, the rain had stopped. Mist hung low over the fields, and the trees dripped like they'd just finished weeping. Silas poured 2 cups of coffee. Set one on the table. Left the other near the cot. She was sitting up when he turned. Hair tangled, face pale, but upright. Alert. A thread of defiance still dancing in her eyes. She reached for the cup. Sipped. Then set it down with a nod, not thanks, but recognition. He sat opposite her, the table between them more than just wood. He studied her hands. Small. Calloused. The sort that had worked, not wandered. "Name's Silas," he said. "Mercer. Used to run the traplines near Cotton Creek." Still nothing. He tried again. "You got a name?" She looked at him, then away. Her gaze landed on the mantel, where a small wooden horse stood, whittled by his wife years ago. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Minutes passed. Then, quiet, almost too soft to hear, she spoke. "Taya." He nodded once. Didn't press. Names were bridges, but only if someone wanted to cross. That afternoon, he found her standing by the window, staring at the hills. She'd moved without sound. The shawl draped over her shoulders had once belonged to his wife. It looked right on her. Like it had remembered how to warm someone again. Town was a half-day's ride, but gossip traveled faster than horses. By sundown, Silas knew the whispers had started. Maggie Clay had spotted him with Taya's limp form across his arms. He could picture her voice curling through the saloon like smoke, his gone soft on some wild girl. Maybe took her captive. He didn't care for town talk. But it coiled around the cabin all the same, like vines looking for cracks. That night, Taya didn't sleep. She stood near the fire, wrapped in the shawl, her shadow tall on the wall. Silas dozed in the corner, one eye half open, as always. Just before dawn, something shifted. A silence too complete. The kind the earth makes when it's holding its breath. Then, the faintest thud. Boots hit the floor. He grabbed his rifle but didn't raise it. Instead, he stepped outside. They stood like statues, every direction he looked. Warriors. 70 at least. Painted faces, braided hair, horses snorting clouds into the morning chill. The wind moved only when they let it. At their center, a man dismounted. Tall. Broad. His face carved by sun and time. The beadwork on his chest told Silas what he already knew. Taya's father. Behind him, Taya stepped outside. Her bare feet kissed the cold earth. She walked past Silas, unafraid, unflinching, and stood before the man. He spoke in Comanche. His voice low and sure. Silas couldn't understand the words, but he understood the weight. Taya said only one sentence. Then turned, pointed once, toward Silas. A breath. A beat. Then, Chief Rainsong dismounted. Walked toward Silas with a gaze like Judgment Day. Silas didn't move. He held the gaze. Not with pride, but with the steadiness of a man who'd already walked through fire and didn't mind if it took him again. Rainsong stopped a few feet away. Looked him over. Then reached into his pouch and pulled out a small carved stone, smooth, black, shaped like a river pebble. He placed it in Silas's hand. No words. Just the weight of it. Then he turned and walked back to his horse. Taya lingered. Her hand brushed the shore. She looked at Silas, really looked. "I'll come back," she said. "When the ice is gone." He didn't answer. Just nodded. She rode off with them, swallowed by trees. Silas stepped back inside. The house was warm, quiet, still carrying her breath. And on the mantel, beside the wooden horse, sat his wife's locket. He hadn't seen it in years. He picked it up. It was warm. Sometimes, the world gives you a second chance dressed in silence and storm. You won't recognize it at first, not until it's walking away, wrapped in something you'd long thought forgotten. But if you're lucky, you'll hold a piece of it in your hand, small, solid, and carved with something better than redemption. Something like grace.